Sawadee ka, and good morning, everyone. Thank you very much to the Bangkok Post for including us in this really important event. And I was reflecting, listening to Kun Ekniti and then Kun Supaji, how smartly put together this agenda was, because we just heard the big policy picture for the next couple of months. And I know that after me is a panel that has leading people from the private sector thinking about a lot of these issues. So now I feel like it's sort of my job to make a little bit of a connection between these two pieces. There we go. Okay, so we're, not surprisingly, I think we're all converging around this idea that we have a fairly short time to think through how Thailand can take advantage of these changing global world. 1 second, let me make sure I can. No? I might need some technical help. There we go. Yep, now we're in the good place. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. We heard a little bit about this changing global context. Let me give you a little bit about how the World Bank is positioning this, but not too much, because I want to move quickly into Thailand. One fact, the global economy is slowing. So we're going to see growth at only 2.3% in 2025. This is one of the slowest growth patterns we've seen since the financial crisis outside of the specific pandemic years. And we're seeing this at the same time that we're seeing these same global megatrends that Kun Ekniti and Kun Supaji talked about. So certainly the geopolitics that's leading to the trade fragmentation that we just heard about, the nearshoring, the friendshoring. Now, interestingly, when you see global trade expanding at only 1.8%, and Thailand's economy is 60 to 70% in exports, this is potentially a real point of vulnerability unless we figure out how to exploit these changes. The other piece, of course, is climate change. We put out a report a couple of months ago that really looked at the economic impact of climate change for Thailand, and it shows that climate change could lower Thai GDP between 7 and 14% by 2050, unless we're able to make some changes soon. And the last piece, of course, is technology, and I know we'll hear about this a lot in our next panel. One point I'd like to make about that is we know everything is changing, but it's also changing really unevenly. Both the benefits and the costs are being concentrated in a few firms, a few cities, and a few countries. But we know that all of this disruption comes with opportunities, and so that's what I want to talk a little bit about next. So I came to Thailand last year. I've worked in the region a long time, but I've always wanted to work in Thailand. And when I arrived here, everybody was saying to me, we want to reach high income status. We want to do that in the next 10 to 15 years. But as you can see on this chart, hitting that goal requires growth at about 5%. And right now, we've got growth that's about 3 percentage points lower than that, depending whose estimate you're looking at. But basically, this is telling us that in order to hit this goal, we've got a 3 percentage point gap. And so every year that we sit with that gap, we're falling a little bit further behind. So the challenge here is clear. If we want to get to this higher income, more inclusive status, we really need to think about how we can leverage the new economy, this new global economy. Now, there's also some urgency to this because that global economy is coming here. So a little less than a year from now, in October, Thailand has very graciously agreed to host the World Bank IMF annual meetings. So this sounds like not that exciting, but it's kind of like the Olympics of economies, because we'll have, in addition to Kun Ekniti and Kun Supaji, their counterparts from every single country in the world, as well as every single central banker. Most ministers of digital economy will be here, and also the leaders, the global heads of most large companies. And so this is really a chance for Thailand to think about what story do we want to tell over the next year when the focus of the global economy is on Thailand, and how do we want to think about getting there today? So we've been working on this visioning piece with the ministries, also with many of you in the private sector. I've come to meet many of you about this, thinking about how can we help as a convener and a platform to put both data and analytics, but also some action behind these ideas. And so what we want to do over the next year is think about, when you look at industries where there is growth and jobs, what can we do together to get there? Now, the World Bank Group has jobs as the key agenda, the idea to encapsulate how do you have growth both at a macro level for economies and also at the micro level for households and for businesses. And around the world, we're working with governments and businesses on this. What we're doing here is to think about how do we look at industries of the future that Kunakniti referred to, which can also grow jobs and stimulate growth. And so together with government and through these consultations with many of you in the private sector, we've selected 5 industries of the future to look at. So advanced manufacturing, we heard a bit about this from Kunsupaji. Agribusiness, which also takes us to the kitchen of the world and the food security hub idea. Sustainable and health tourism. Digital services, which I know we'll hear more about. And also the creative economy, which is a fairly new concept in economic research, but a really important piece for Thailand. And so I want to just walk quickly through each of these and talk about why this, like what's on offer in the global economy if we take advantage in Thailand. Why Thailand, where the comparative advantage is, and then what do we need to do both quickly and in the medium term. So the first one is this idea of advanced manufacturing or green manufacturing. We know that the global demand is rising rapidly. So the demand for EVs will grow 5 times by 2030, solar PV capacity 3 times, and something that also Kunsupaji mentioned, this importance of low carbon traceability of supply chains. Because if you can prove it, you can win it. And that's where we're seeing particularly growth in the SME space. Those who have access to provable supply chains are the ones that are winning the contracts. Now, why Thailand? So interestingly, we're already the world's leading exporter of eco-friendly air conditioners, which is a huge market. 4.2% of global solar PV exports from Thailand, an emerging hub for EVs and components. But what you can see in this chart that's on your right is that there's still room for growth. Our green complexity score, which is a way of looking at what is the market, what are we taking advantage of, and where's the gap, shows that our green goods are only 10% of our exports. So there's substantial upside here because that has us below some of the key regional and global peers. So what do we need to do to get there? Now, some of this we heard about from our earlier speakers, but let me mention a few of them. One of the keys is to make clean industry a Thai advantage. And so this means securing cleaner power and modern grids, doing a little bit better at co-investing between government and the private sector in advanced tooling and particularly research and development. That's lower in Thailand than in our competitors. Also upgrading the supply chains with decarbonization and the traceability. And we heard a little bit earlier about the idea of mobilizing finance for SMEs, and particularly for SMEs that are working in this manufacturing space so that they can upgrade factories now, not later. There also is a sort of quick big win here, because Thailand has a history of accessing green finance and accessing global markets, but it's one that we haven't leveraged a lot recently. And so we're working with Thailand, with both the private sector and with the government, to launch the Low Carbon Cities platform. So this will help cities, local industries, and also Thai SMEs to both generate and then monetize carbon credits, to connect to the international markets to secure the financing, and to really benefit from these stronger incentives for renewable energy, energy efficiency, and EV adoption. Importantly, what it does is set up a platform for what's called digital MRV, measuring, reporting, and verifying emissions. It's this sort of traceability that builds the credibility of the market here in Thailand. And so this is one of the ways to lower the carbon footprint of the supply chain and take advantage of this growing and changing market. Let me go to the second area, digital services. So why this? Maybe I'll speak globally because I know our panel next will speak a lot about this. But we know that global digital markets are exploding, quite frankly. Digitally delivered services have grown 5 times in the last 20 years. IT service employment, 4 times. And this last piece about data is very important. Just in the last 10 to 15 years, the amount of data created and stored has grown 90 times. Now, why Thailand? Is Thailand the country that people think about when they think about digital services? Maybe not, but it certainly should be. Thailand already has broad mobile broadband access. We've got prompt pay, Thai ID, growing e-commerce, surging FDI in data centers, e-wallets. So Thais are very good at using digital financial services. And there's a real payoff here for people. We heard earlier from both ministers about the need to help with upskilling and getting people into the digital job space. And you can see that these jobs command a 20 to 30% wage premium. But Thais don't necessarily report that they have the digital skills needed to get into these industries quickly. In our surveys, only 5% of Thai people say that they have the intermediate skills necessary to jump into some of these jobs, and only 1% report advanced skills. So there's work to be done here. But there's an opportunity that we can quantify. So if Thailand can catch up with peers, the digital sectors could attract more than $1.8 billion additionally annually in venture capital. And you can see that some of those areas with the largest growth are ones where we're already well placed. E-commerce and fintech alone can bring in about $600 million. And interestingly, food tech and travel tech, where Thailand has an advantage, are growing even faster. So what do we need to do? We need to help Thai firms package and export their technology, particularly things that Thailand is already doing well in the destination wellness platforms, hospital IT, and other digital services, agro-logistics related to the kitchen of the world. And to turn this idea of usage into exports and adoption into good jobs. We also need to keep the digital backbone building to scale and up to date, because the international firms investing in Thailand expect reliable and secure data centers, strong cybersecurity, and clear, predictable rules on how that data is going to be stored and used. And I know we'll hear more about that later. This is also about physical infrastructure, because there's no good saying that we're going to become the digital services hub if we don't have the clean energy to power this work. And importantly, also the water supply, because you need water for cooling for these data centers for attracting industry. So this is important to not lose sight of the fact that the hard infra sectors remain very important. Let me go to the next one. Agribusiness. Also, as we heard, Thailand is kitchen of the world. So now why this? Kunsupaji talked a lot about this. You know, we're seeing the food industry diversifying, modernized agribusiness really beginning to increase productivity, and real opportunities here if we can show that we've got safe, traceable, and climate-smart products. Why Thailand? Almost a quarter of our GDP is in agriculture, food, and beverages. So we're invested in this, and we have a lot of knowledge in Thailand. Also, about 1/3 of jobs are in this sector. So it's a really important piece of how Thailand can get not only at the macro level, but at the household level on this growth path. We also are a top exporter. Some of the things that we heard about from Kunsupaji. Rice, we talked about, but also rubber, chicken, sugar, tapioca, canned tuna, of course, and fruits and vegetables. We have significant comparative advantages there, but there is scope to increase productivity. So if you look at the chart that's all the way over to the right, this is where you can see how we line up with our regional peers, particularly in vegetables, in cereals, and in fruits as well. There's still space to increase productivity. But this gap is also solvable. This is not a huge gap. And this is why part of why we hear so much about the strategy of the food hub and the kitchen of the world. So what do we need to do? On this one, it's not that many changes. Part of it is making standards actually a strategy in the dialogue between government and business, but also connecting the smallholders to these value chains, structuring it with the cold storage, fair contracts, and the digital traceability. And the more we can certify Thai products to international standards, the more the markets will be opened up, and we can continue to build the brand Thailand. Okay, let me go to the fourth one, which is sustainable and health tourism. So again, why this? Everyone knows Thailand is a tourism hub, but we know that tourist arrivals in Asia Pacific are projected to continue to grow by 70% over the next decade or so. We also know that preferences are shifting towards luxury, health, and wellness travel. So this idea of shifting from volume into value. Why Thailand? This one feels obvious, but it's always good to remember that actually the data bears it out. So Thailand's right now the number 2 destination in East Asia and Pacific, and number 10 globally. But as we were hearing about earlier, Thailand has one thing that very few competitors can match. And that's this reputation and infrastructure for the health and wellness tourism. And it's interesting if we think a little bit about the history of why that's the case. It actually goes back to Thailand being one of the first countries to adopt universal health coverage. And what this did was build over time a really trusted public sector health system. And then that got translated into the private sector and private hospitals being able to offer the more niche and wellness products. And right now we know that in Thailand, for specialized health services and wellness services, Thailand is offering what are OECD standards, but at a more reasonable cost, packaged together with the hospitality and the tourism wrap. So Thailand was doing this much before this became a big market in the tourism market. And so it makes absolute sense to be going after this in a very targeted way. But that doesn't mean that everything can just stay where it is. There's still work to do, as you can see in the chart on the right. So Thailand ranks very well overall in this International Travel and Tourism Development Index, but ranks lower on sustainability. That may be a surprising fact. Lower on sustainability. And so what does that mean? That means we still have space to grow on clean mobility, on nature protection, on energy, water, and coastal erosion protection, and also on the cultural protection, a lot of the heritage that we have here. We need to be investing in the protection of these assets. And so what do we do now? Part of this is adopting these credible destination standards and really pivoting to this idea of attracting the high spend, but also lower impact on the environment tourists. And also this idea of improving sustainability, not only for tourists who come to our beaches, but also broadening the destinations so that we can bring the value chains and we can grow the multipliers of these tourist arrivals in some of the other cities and the other beautiful areas around the country. Okay, let me go to the last of these 5 industries. This is the creative economy. Now, this feels like a fairly new one, and the research is still evolving on what are the impacts of the creative economy in economies more broadly and more widely. Usually we hear about Korea as the leading example of this, and you can see that there's a big global offer on the table. So more than $2 trillion in revenues annually, and this industry supports 50 million jobs around the world. It's also growing. So this category of creative goods exports grew 3.5 times in the last decade. And maybe most important for Thailand, this idea of creative services exports grew almost 3 times. And so this is really a space where Thailand can jump in. So why? One thing is that Thai stories are really beginning to travel. Probably everyone has seen, I have as well, The Girl from Nowhere on Netflix broke into the Netflix chart, not only in Asia, but globally, which means this is carrying the story of Thailand's creativity more broadly. The same with How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies. I mean, that went viral globally. We've also had international series being filmed here, and so the word is getting out. But are we packaging that in a way so that we can grow these core creative industries? Right now, less than 2% of our employment is in the core creative industries, a little bit above 15% if you take the broader logistics and hospitality. But what this chart shows is that there's a high value add for workers. So if we can take a bigger piece of this part of the economy with Thai workers, you're going to see more value add come back into the communities where these creative services and creative goods are being produced. So this is one where probably there's some more thinking to do about how to actually structurally go after this part of the economy. What do we need to do, which is what we see down here with the target. So one is to think about how to make Thailand more of a content launchpad, how to take advantage of where we've seen the breakthroughs, particularly in the film, motion picture, gaming, and design that I was talking about. We've seen that recently there have been fast-track permitting and different agencies and ministries working to attract creative content creators into Thailand. And so we need to sort of grab that, advertise it, and make Thailand an easy yes for those who want to invest here. We also can do more to grow Thailand's own creators by thinking through having creative districts, shared services, and also shared export services to get Thai products more easily into international festivals and partnerships so that we can really have a distribution route for this Thai intellectual property, and also in a way that it's protected. Okay, so those are the 5 industries. So the advanced and green manufacturing, digital services, agribusiness, and the creative economy. And I want to talk just a little bit, because I'm not sure that others will address this, about how do we think about the people and the places that Thailand needs. So future industries need future-ready cities. And that means not only Bangkok, but when I travel around to the other cities that we're working with, Khon Kaen, Chiang Mai, Hat Yai, Phuket, Ubon, Udon Thani, and others, are thinking through how to be smart cities. What do they need to do to attract investment? Because for Thailand to grow, we need poles in addition to Bangkok to grow. And we also need the human capital, so talented Thais, ready to work in these industries around the country. And so some of the recommendations. Every region should have practical, employer-anchored training that's linked to real jobs in one or more of these kinds of industries where there's global growth and comparative advantage for Thailand. But the winners also need clean power, efficient transport, predictable permitting, good places to live and create a standard of living, digital connectivity also. And so if we can pull this together, this is how we need to align the infrastructure, skills, and zoning so that firms will invest, and importantly, talent will stay, and this opportunity will spread. We're envisioning having a city where you could be having a film festival at the same time that you're having farm-to-table, kitchen of the world type culinary experiences and export advertising, having the digital services to market it, and also having the green technology producers who can power and make it happen. That's how we can drive growth across cities, not only in Bangkok, but around the country. Okay, so let me go back to this idea that the whole world economy is coming here to Bangkok in about 11 months. So what are we doing? So we're working with Bangkok Post, other media outlets, also with the ministries, and with many of you in the private sector, to run a national foresight process. Our idea is to help Thailand be prepared and to support Thailand in the image that we want to project to the world when the world comes here. But also to think strategically about the fact that if we have all these other countries in the world coming here with their heads of government and heads of business, what might Thai businesses also want to be looking for to take advantage of that opportunity? And so we'll work on this together over the next year, and so that we can have a really successful event when we get there. And we're calling that Building Thailand's Future Today, which amazingly looks also like our blueprint for Thailand. And I think that's a good thing, because I think everybody is pulling together to really try to take advantage of these opportunities that we have. So thank you very much. I look forward to continuing with everyone.